Now let's look at the next topic and the last topic for this session, agile artifacts. So artifacts are special items that are created as part of the agile scrum methodology. So there are mainly three artifacts: a product backlog, a sprint backlog, and a burndown chart. The first artifact is a product backlog. So initially, when the product owner and manager and other stakeholders will have a discussion with the customer or the end user, the customer could be an internal customer or an external customer. The requirements are discussed in great detail, and eventually a big list of work items are created. This list of big work items is called the product backlog. This is something that the customers have requested for, and this is what our roadmap looks like. You want to finish off all the items in the backlog in a given amount of time. So once a product backlog is created, what the product owner does is, at the beginning of the sprint, there will be a sprint planning meeting where the product owner would prioritize certain items in the product backlog that are being planned to be implemented first and move them to the sprint backlog. So the product backlog generally consists of epics. Epics are essentially large work items with a scope. So it could be a big feature, it could be a number of features that are planned for this particular product, and these epics are too big. They are then broken into stories, where each story talks about an user experience or a particular short requirement. It's in the form of, this particular user wants to do this particular thing and gets this particular benefit or outcome out of it. So user stories are simple statements. They have a title which talks about what the story is about and what the short requirement is, and then each story is assigned sprint points. Like I have mentioned previously, they follow planning poker to determine on a specific number of points by coming up with ballpark figures. Every team member has an opinion and gives a point, and then there will be a consensus, and once the consensus is reached, the sprint points are assigned to the story. And this story can be further broken into individual tasks. For example, user registration could be a story. So for user registration, you would need a home screen. That could be a task, and then you will need a certain form to be filled for registration, and you need a submit button, and it has to interact with the backend. So all these will be like the various tasks involved in a particular story. And the next important artifact is sprint backlog. So as I explained previously, once the product owner creates a sprint backlog for the upcoming sprint, stories, all the team members will estimate the stories and use planning poker and Fibonacci numbers. And then once the prioritized stories are known, the team will agree and commit stories for this milestone. It's important to ensure that before committing, you have to understand that for a given milestone or a sprint, there is like say it's 2 weeks or 4 weeks, and if the story points that do not fit into a particular sprint timelines, then you might have to reconsider and remove some of them so that stories will fit in that particular milestone. And as and when the sprint progresses, the sprint backlog will naturally reduce in size. So you'll be removing each backlog item from the sprint and mark them as completed. so that will decrease the number of stories in the sprint backlog. And once the sprint is complete, then the next sprint is created and a new sprint backlog is created, and this process will repeat for every iteration. So then third one is a burndown chart. So what is a burndown chart? So how do we visualize how we are progressing with these sprints, and are we doing good? So managers and upper management would definitely like to know how we are progressing and get some early feedback and get an idea of any possible delays. So for this purpose, we can create a burndown chart. A burndown chart is essentially a chart where points are tracked across a sprint milestone, and you will, so initially when the sprint begins, say the sprint has say 100 points, just for example, say, so it starts with 100 at the beginning of the sprint, and with the x-axis would be time, and as time progresses the 100 will keep reducing, and by the time the sprint ends it should essentially reach 0. So it will be you'll observe that it's a slope, it will be going down with time, and this can be used to track progress. If you see that the burndown chart is not moving as expected, that indicates that there is some problem with the team or the projects that are being undertaken, and something needs to be done to fix that. So the overall number of points finished in a particular sprint is called velocity, and this is measured for every sprint. Say for example, you have in the last 6 months had 12 sprints, where each sprint is a duration of 14 days. So, and you will be measuring the velocity for all the 12 sprints. Say for the first sprint it was 100, the next sprint it was 90, and then the next sprint it was 80. That clearly indicates a pattern that the productivity is going down, or there are some problems with estimates, or it could be there are some blocking issues or complications involved or change in requirements, and that's one way the upper management will know that something is not going on well, and they need to correct the path. And once they figure it out, and sometimes ideally the velocity should grow with sprints, because the team is at the beginning of the whole project, the team is not aware of the requirements clearly, or there are so many unknowns, so the team doesn't know what technical challenges the team might face in delivering this project, and what kind of new requirements change, or you don't have the full picture at the beginning, so productivity will be low. And with time there will be a growth in you will become an expert in that product and the technology area, and team members are becoming better and collaborating better, and that will help improve the time taken for completing the same task, and that will improve with time, and the number of points that you will be able to finish per sprint would increase proportionally with the expertise and exposure to the project. And we anticipate that the velocity will grow with time, and that's burndown charts is all about that, and you can quickly visualize the overall progress and how the teams are performing and make improvements accordingly. So that's the third artifact.